Welcome back. You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with the Deputy Political Editor of The Sun, Ryan Saby, and the Editor of The Courier, David Clegg. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. Well, the first full day of the general election campaign leads the Financial Times, which says Rishi Sunak will not be able to deliver on his flagship immigration and anti-smoking policies unless he wins on July the 4th. The ditching of those flagship policies is also lead story in The Guardian. And a slip of the tongue by Mr Sunak about football while visiting a pub in Wales is lead story in The Mirror. Rishi's bumpy takeoff is how the Metro reports that news of no deportation flights to Rwanda before the election. In The Express, Mr Sunak attacks Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer, accusing him of being afraid to face him in a television debate. The story's also lead item in tomorrow's Telegraph. The Mail says that the Tories are planning to cut green levies on fuel bills in an effort to win votes. The Times too reports that falling energy bills will be one of the biggest election issues. David's paper, The Courier, carries the story of a problematic launch for the SNP's election campaign in Scotland. But The Star says holiday bookings have rocketed as Brits flee the country to avoid the 4th of July. Ryan's paper, The Sun, puts the election on its inside pages and leads on an investigation showing that 8 out of 10 pints of beer served in pubs were short-measured. I wouldn't know, don't drink. And a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch us. And we are joined tonight by Ryan Saby and David Clegg. Welcome to both of you. So we're going to start with, guess what? What is happening in 6 weeks' time? The FT front page. They're suggesting that Rishi Sunak has made a faltering start to the election campaign. Why so, David?
So after what I think is pretty widely accepted to be a shock announcement yesterday that we're going to have the general election in 6 weeks' time rather than in the autumn as we were expecting, all of the parties have come out of the blocks launching their campaign today. And given it was Rishi Sunak's decision to call it, that he was the one who was able to prepare, set the date, you think that he would have the most sure-footed first day, but that's not really been the case. Some of that has been unavoidable, some of it has been avoidable. So the Financial Times leads on some of the serious issues about that. The top of which is him having to admit that Rwanda flights are not going to take off before the election, which of course he memorably made a bet about on television in what was quite a cringe-worthy moment. So he's now lost a bet about that, and the flagship policy is not going to happen. They've also have to dump some other quite important legislation, particularly the one on banning young people from smoking, which I think the Conservative government got a lot of credit for taking what was considered quite a progressive and forward-thinking approach by trying to introduce that legislation. So that's gone as well. And really, it seems that the only stuff that is going to get done before Parliament is prorogued is dealing with those two terrible scandals, the infected blood scandal and the post office scandal. Those are the two things that they have to get done, or that will just not be credible. You've then had some of the more traditional campaign blunders throughout the day today. He asked Welsh people about whether they're looking forward to the Euros when Wales haven't qualified. He took questions from people in a Derbyshire factory about the election, and it turned out they were Tory councillors. So there is a little bit of a feeling after that, you know, certainly very memorable launch outside Downing Street yesterday in the pouring rain with a Labour theme song blasting out. It felt that they would want some stability today, but I'm not certain that that is what's happened.
Yesterday, let's go back to yesterday before we get into the papers, Ryan. Was there no one with an umbrella? Why was that allowed to happen?
Well, I think Rishi Sunak was very keen to get out there and maintain the traditions of the Prime Minister. They always stand there on the steps of Downing Street and make that announcement to say you're actually going to the country and inform the country that you've spoken to the King and you want to hold an election. And quite easily they could have got inside. It may have looked better, but I think he just wanted to project this image of him just getting on with it and being outside Downing Street, and come rain or shine, he's Prime Minister and will go to the country and start campaigning. So
somebody could have given an umbrella before
I think the trouble with that is you probably go back about 15 years now. You remember at Wembley where you had Steve McLaren, the England manager, who stood on the touchline in that one of the qualifying games, stood there with an umbrella, and he got labelled the Wally with the brolly. When you're a strategist, you can imagine what the headlines would have been the next day if he had done that. So I think number 10 strategist or anyone with half a brain in Downing Street was said, whatever you do, we're going to try and find a weather window where it doesn't rain for 5 minutes, but whatever you do, you're not going out there with an umbrella.
Interestingly, one of the things he did today was go to Scotland. So one of the reporters at the Courier was there today, and she texted me to say, if he thinks the weather's any better, he probably shouldn't have came to Inverness, because it was even worse there today.
Yes, the rain was following him around. In terms of what is going to get through Parliament before the election, I mean, he will have known, as David was saying, that he's the one that called the date. He will have known that all these things would not be able to make it through. That's
right. That's why he's trying to frame, in the early part of the election in the first few days, he's going to set out how he is the future. So things like the Rwanda plan that's not going to get set off before July the 4th, they will go after the election if he wins. But there's a whole host of legislation that's not going to see the light of day under this administration, which is the football governance bill, the cigarette ban, which was meant to be this big flagship piece of legislation that was going to go through. It's just going to fall by the wayside. His argument will be, we'll get on with it if re-elected. But lots of MPs are upset that he didn't actually, wait until the autumn. They were going to raise issues from constituents. They had vested interests in this legislation as well. So that's why there's a lot of people on his side who are particularly aggrieved that he did go for an early election. Yeah, that's been raised in a couple of the papers, that his own MPs are none too happy about this July the 4th election. Yeah, certainly. I think there's self-interest there, and there's also party interest. Well, obviously, MPs are concerned because they think that this is an inauspicious time to launch. The polls are awful. He would be the most unpopular Prime Minister to ever win an election and be re-elected if he was to do it from here. And frankly, there's not much sign that is going to happen. There's also the question of I've been quite struck from some of the Tory MPs I've spoken to, and also their public comments, so not necessarily having to speak to them privately about it, is that they had no sense that this was happening. They were very much all working towards a rhythm of some election in the autumn and going then. So there was some, I think, quite fevered speculation about whether they're going to put letters into the 1922 committee and try and veto the election that way. That seems far-fetched and preposterous. Yeah. But even the fact that it was clearly being mentioned by somebody shows that he has unsettled the Conservative MPs with this, and that is also not a useful background mood to be going into an election campaign with. I think there's also the issue when it comes to the Rwanda flights that, if you have passed this flagship legislation, you may have got one flight off the ground, but the legislation was meant to prove to be a deterrent. Now, if it gets to sort of September, and you've had boats crossing the channel all throughout that time, the deterrent hasn't worked. You could be even in a worse situation, and also with the economy. Is it going to get so much better? Are interest rates going to be cut by the Bank of England? Are things going to get so much better that people think that you could hold that election in the autumn? Well, that's one of the reasons that he believes the economy is turning round, and maybe that's what spurred him on. At the moment, he can say, stick with my plan. If he waits until the autumn and things aren't much better, well, perhaps everyone will say, let's give the other guy a chance. There's also, I think, the sense that there had been talk of there being another fiscal event, a mini-budget of sorts at some point before this election. Perhaps he's thought, actually, I'm not going to have the money that I thought I would have to do the tax giveaways here, so I'm as well just to get it go now, and that way I don't have to answer to why we're not doing that. And there'll be so much speculation when you get to September about when the date of that election would be. It would just bog you down. Yeah. The Express, Ryan, you take us into this. They have Rishi Sunak throwing the gauntlet down to Sir Keir Starmer. He's challenged him to weekly televised election debates. But apparently,
Sir Keir Starmer hasn't obliged.
That's right. Tory strategists or people working for the Conservative Party today are very keen to push this of trying to get Keir Starmer to actually agree to a once-a-week televised debate during the election. It's normally the challenger who's pushing this, but this time it's got the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister, you know, the Conservative Party are 20-odd points behind in the polls, and this is the moment they need to find a chink in the armour of Keir Starmer and that massive poll lead to keep chipping away at it.
So hoping that he'll slip up.
So hoping that he'll slip up and they'll just find something, and you'll put Keir Starmer up in front of the public watching at home, and something will give. But it's going to take a hell of a lot to actually turn that around.
Do you think Sir Keir Starmer will stump up for the debates?
I think he will, actually. I mean, there's some ludicrous talk here about doing 6, so you'd have one every week before the election. I think, frankly, no broadcaster would agree to that because they would like some ratings. But I feel like strategically there's some problems here as well. So I think the case has been very well set out there about why the Conservatives are keen to push this, and clearly they are keen to push it because it's not just the Express. They've briefed this to lots of newspapers tomorrow. And the idea is that it'll force Starmer to do this thing that could possibly change the game. There's a parallel with Nick Clegg in 2010 and Clegg Mania and all of that. I think the issue is that there's not much evidence, one, that the public necessarily buy into this, given all those serious issues we've been discussing, the fact that the context of this election isn't to a background which is such a serious state that the UK and the wider world is in, and the fact that it needs such steady guidance and governance, but also the fact that Rishi Sunak as a politician hasn't ever, to me, shown much sign of being this master debater that is going to take on Keir Starmer and change the public perception of him. Some of the language in this is extraordinary. The Express quotes Conservative Party Chairman Richard Holden, and he's saying, "It's no surprise spineless Sir Keir Starmer is now chickening out of debates that he publicly promised to do just months ago. It's time for Sir Keir to grow a backbone."
I think
that kind of rhetoric just seems so
They are trying to ramp it up.
wild.
In fairness to Sir Keir Starmer, he was asked about this back in January, and he said, when it comes to TV debates, the question was, are you trying to duck it? And he said, bring it on, bring them on. He will, I'm sure, he will absolutely take part in a 1, 2, 3, whether it's one a week. When you've got the Euros as the backdrop, I'm sure lots of the public will be sort of more interested in watching the football. But you know, there will be 1 or 2 debates that they'll both take part in.
It'd be interesting to see. But yes, a good reminder about that Nick Clegg moment, because that was the turning factor for him, wasn't it? That debate really was what won it.
And as someone with the surname Clegg, it was memorable for me.
No relation. Ryan and David for the minute, thank you. Let's see what's coming up after the break. Well, the Prime Minister puts his foot in it during his visit to a Wales brewery. Stay with us for more on that and other stories.
An enormous explosion has just come down.
I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent.
You either live and recover, or you die.
And I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles.
It's turning everybody into, a crazy, violent drug addict.
How are you feeling? I am angry. Legal abortion!
It is an anti-woman agenda.
2 women say that you paid for their abortions. Are you a hypocrite, sir? Will your candidates win?
I hope so. I think they will. I think they're great candidates. I gotta be realistic. My sister's dead.
More than 4 weeks on, there's no murder weapon and no suspect. Are you going to catch this killer?
We are doing everything we can.
Ghislaine Maxwell has pleaded not guilty to all 6 charges against her. Mum, how are you feeling today?
Jeffrey said, you answer to Ghislaine, you just don't cross her.
I'm so excited.
Severe nightmares of these people coming in and just taking me in the middle of the night.
I've watched as whole towns were torn apart by natural disaster.
I'm alive and I'm thankful for that, but there are a lot of people who aren't.
It's not the winds people fear most here, it's the water. We take you to the heart of the stories which shape our world. Do you truly believe what you're saying?
A lot of cases that I know are reported from Ukrainian missiles themselves.
Ambassador, with respect, I think that's preposterous.
Significant day of this conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Heavy vehicle.
Why only in America?
People want their country to work.
You want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first.
Welcome back. You are watching the press preview, still with me. Deputy Political Editor of The Sun, Ryan Sabey, and the editor of The Courier, David Clegg. Welcome back to both of you. We're going to start with your paper, first of all, David. And the headline there, Sweeney's SNP pitch scuppered by scandal. That's all anybody wanted to talk about today.
Yes, I think it was really quite an inexplicable decision by John Swinney and the SNP. There must be more background to it, and I'm not honestly sure what it is. This has been a long-running scandal about Michael Matheson. He was a Scottish minister. He has now admitted that he ran up £11,000 on a Parliament phone bill by streaming his children streaming football when they were on holiday. The Parliament has been investigating it for a long time. He stood down as a minister. It was pretty involved in Hamza Yousaf's fall from grace as well. He spent a lot of political capital on Michael Matheson and then ultimately had to jettison him. The sanction was finally published in the Parliament this morning on day one of the election campaign, and just before John Swinney went to launch the SNP's election campaign, he stood up in Parliament and said that he was not going to back what the Parliamentary Committee had recommended for Michael Matheson, which was a 27-day suspension from Parliament and his pay docked for 54 days. He suggested that one of the Conservative MSPs on that committee had prejudiced the investigation. Now, the ins and outs of that, we can have an argument about, but certainly the politics of it, to be defending what the public widely view as an expense cheat on day one of an election campaign seems like not where you would like to be as you're launching it. And it certainly bulldozed the entire launch event in Edinburgh today, which is all he was asked about by the journalists. The policies and how he wanted to frame the election barely got a look in. And his day was then made worse again subsequently when Peter Morrell, Nicola Sturgeon's husband and the former chief executive of the SNP, who was charged in connection to a police investigation into embezzlement of SNP finances. The report on his case was submitted to prosecutors today. So Rishi Sunak was having a difficult day today, but so was John Swinney. Yeah.
Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer will be in Scotland tomorrow, we read. I'm just going to move on just because of time, Ryan. If you can take us into the Daily Mirror.
Yeah, I think this
and the front page story
yes,
there.
this would go down as a footy blunder. The Prime Minister, as part of visiting the four nations at the start of the election campaign, was making some small talk with some workers in a brewery in Wales and asked them whether they were looking forward to the Euro 2024 championships. And it suddenly emerged from one of the staff members members there that they're not actually, they didn't actually qualify and they won't be playing. So England and Scotland will be there, but Wales weren't. And there's a few nervous laughters and they quickly moved on. But yeah, it sort of summed up a difficult day for the leaders.
Maybe that's the solution. The Wales can host the TV debates that nobody else will be watching.
It's a very difficult small chat, though. I mean, it's not a huge mistake for him to make, is it?
Yeah, no. I mean, the cameras are on you, and he's just trying to get the sort of conversation going, trying to open up the conversation before they talk about sort of more substantial policy.
I think he said, whether it's England, Scotland or Wales, what the government supports is the hospitality industry, which he didn't get much credit for. I thought that was a reasonable comeback.
David and Ryan, thank you so much for taking us through the papers. Coming up next on Sky News at 11, all the latest following the first day of election campaigning in our news review and press preview at the top of the hour.